Government of Canada. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Fifth Report of Canada, covering the period January 1995 to April 2004. So you see, they do reports, it looks like every 9 years. The next one is due in 2013. Canada's fifth report on the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on December 19, 1966. Canada acceded to the Covenant on May 19, 1976. State parties are required to report to the United Nations on measures they have taken to give effect to the Covenant. Canada's fifth report on the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights covers the period of January 1995 to April 2004. It was prepared in close collaboration by the federal, provincial, and territorial governments. On May 19, 1996, Canada, the state party, became a signatory to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. They signed and they agreed to follow this covenant and follow the applications of law that are found in this covenant on May 19, 1976. Now, it states in this article, in this report, that Canada has to report to the United Nations the measures that Canada has taken to realize the covenant within its country. And we look and we see that this report here is published from 1995 to 2004. It was a 9-year period before there was a report that was made. Now, if we reported anything else in a span or a period of 9 years, we would say that's ridiculous. But here, when it comes to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, a 9-year span for a report is adequate, apparently, for Canada. It actually says that Canada, the Covenant, and all state parties are required, that's the word that is used, required to report how it is implementing the Covenant in the country. Now, Canada became a state party to this Covenant in 1976. This report came out in 2004. And it is the fifth report ever done. So in 28 years, Canada has produced 5 reports concerning how they are implementing the Covenant here in Canada. Recognizing that in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the ideal of free human beings enjoying, not pursuing, but enjoying civil and political freedom and freedom from fear and want can only be achieved if conditions are created, whereby everyone may enjoy, not pursue, enjoy his civil and political rights, as well as his economic, social, and cultural rights. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and most other international covenant or instrument that is there, it's for us. It's for men and women. The conception of these instruments, if you will, the idea of it was that of a free human being or free human beings enjoying freedom from fear and want. That's what these international covenants are about. That's the reason behind them. That's the articles of law within them, contained within them. Their objective is a free human being enjoying freedom from fear and want. It wasn't for the banks to make money. It wasn't for the big oil companies to make huge profits. And it wasn't for the government to collect taxes off of persons. These documents are for us human beings, free men and women, to understand what our rights and freedoms are, what we are born with, and what is there for us within this commercial system. And the object, again, of this covenant was to require or to make free human beings who enjoy freedom from fear and want. And the people, or those in the position of so-called authority, realize that in order for this to happen, that conditions had to be created, that it couldn't just happen automatically. So they wrote words through this covenant declaring what the conditions are in order for that a human being or a man and woman can be free. So we need to understand and realize that these international instruments are not for the commercial world. They're not for the banking system. They're not for the oil companies. They're not for, if you will, and I'm sorry to say it in this way, but for the lawyers or for the judges. They are in an individual level, but not in a commercial level. They are for us, to protect us and to help us, to guarantee our rights and freedoms. Article 27 of this report. In 2003-2004, the federal government increased the Canadian Health and Social Transfer, CHST, the primary mechanism by which the Government of Canada transfers funds to provincial and territorial governments for health care, post-secondary education, social assistance, and social services, including early childhood development, to $37.9 billion compared to $25.8 billion in 1997-1998. In 2003 and 2004, the federal government transferred $30.9 billion into healthcare, post-secondary education, social services, social assistance, and the like. And this amount of money, $37.9 billion, is the primary or the foremost means that the funds get transferred into these systems. So Canada spent for their people for the year 2003-2004 to support them in healthcare, in education, in social services and social assistance, plus others, $37.9 billion. According to this report, that was done for the United Nations. That was done under the requirement of the fact that Canada is a signatory to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Canada stated that they spent $37.9 billion for persons, humans, men, women, for the social systems and the like. Canada, though, also stated that Canada paid $47.5 billion, that's billion, in interest to, or on the debt to the banks, in the form of $130 million a day. And they got that interest, that money, from the paychecks of their workers here in Canada, meaning you and I. So Canada spends $37 billion for us, and they give away in interest for money that was created artificially, a propped up debt system. They give away $47.5 billion for that year. In 1999, the Government of Canada launched the 3-year National Homelessness Initiative to help reduce and prevent homelessness across Canada. This included $305 million in funding under the NHI's Cornerstone Program for the Supporting Communities Partnership Initiative, which is designed to help communities across Canada in partnership with all levels of government and not-for-profit and private stakeholders to plan and implement comprehensive local strategies addressing the needs. In this report that spans 9 years, we have an indication in there in 1999, and it says that Canada spent $305 million but over a 3-year period. So they spend about $100 million a year. And they spent this money to plan and implement strategies concerning the homeless in Canada. So they spent $305 million planning strategies concerning the homeless. And it says in this report that they did this with the private sector. The private sector. And we know that the private sector doesn't do this out of the goodness of their heart, to respect the rights and fundamental freedoms of a human being. The private sector is motivated by one thing, and one thing only, which is profits. Dollar bills. And unfortunately, some human beings are motivated by that also. However, Canada spent $305 million to plan how they're going to combat homelessness. When you know and understand that Canada spends now, in 2012, just over $160 million a day in interest on the debt, and back then, in 1999, it was roughly equivalent to about $110 to $120 million a day in interest that Canada was paying. And they are only willing to spend $100 million. And that per year, when they pay $120 million per day on debt. Now, that $100 million per year was supposed to go into planning what they're going to do about homelessness. So we still have some hope. Hopefully Canada invested a lot more money into actually building shelters and building homes for the homeless. So let's go see what that report says. On March 4th, 2003, the Government of Canada renewed its commitment to fighting homelessness in communities across Canada by investing $405 million over the next 3 years. There will be a stronger focus on long-term transitional and supportive interventions and preventative measures. In November 2001, the Government of Canada introduced a $680 million affordable housing program to stimulate the production of affordable housing, including units for the relative homeless. An additional $320 million investment was made in 2003, bringing the total investment to $1 billion by 2007-2008. The Government of Canada also announced a $384 million investment in housing renovation. The affordable housing program will be evaluated in a few years when sufficient data is available. Ridiculous. So in the report it said that from the year 1999 until the year 2008, it's looking forward, the report, because this report was from 2004. It says the federal government spent or will spend the total of $1 billion as of 2008 concerning homelessness and making sure that everyone has a home to be safe and secure. So the federal government is willing to spend $1 billion in financing to make sure everyone is safe and secure in a span of 9 years. 9 years. In 2008, the debt interest in Canada was roughly about $140 million of interest that the Canadian citizens or the federal government have to pay every day. Every day. So in 9 days, the federal government was paying to the international bankers $1.26 billion. $1.26 billion every day for interest. In 9 days. It passes $1 billion. Yet Canada, the federal government, only spent $1 billion in 9 years, 9 years, to implement the covenants concerning the fact that every human being has a right to adequate housing and food and clothing and the continued improvement of living conditions.